Moving the needle on founder failure, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Lucas Poles, and welcome to Startup 2.0 by Spark XYZ. Join us each week as we give you access to some of the top investors and entrepreneurs around the country to help you think through and overcome some of the top challenges that startups face.
I think there's no better place in the country to be investing than Los Angeles.
What is the problem that you're solving and for who? Like, what is that specific pain point?
Sometimes when a company is not listening to its customers and just thinks it knows better than its customers, has a really, really hard time finding product market fit.
I want to see somebody that isn't going to stop. You know, this person, you just feel like they're gonna make it work.
Big heartfelt thank you to Brex, who without their support, this show would not be possible. We've seen firsthand the difficulties accessing basic corporate credit without providing a security deposit or personal guarantee early on. As companies grow, managing expenses has become more difficult and time consuming, which is why we've partnered with Brex to offer a corporate credit card that is not personally guaranteed, offers higher credit limits, provides auto reconciliation, and integrates with ERPs using receipt capture. Brex is the credit card of the startup ecosystem, and we highly encourage you to check them out.
Owned and operated by 130 Swiss operating banks. So for them to do it alone, it didn't make much sense. They said, hey, let's set up an accelerator where we have a bunch of different corporate members from the Swiss ecosystem to come on board and to collaborate with startups and look at the whole innovation lifecycle. It was very broad, very simple to begin with. Mm-hmm. We did everything from early stage, to late stage. We did hackathons. We did a 6-month incubation program. We've done, kind of scale up programs, our acceleration programs. And that was what we set up in 2016. We've actually had a lot of good success early on with that, primarily focusing and bringing startups that want to come and collaborate in Switzerland with the Swiss banks and financial services players and insurtech players. We started with our first program with 3 corporate members. We're now up to 14 corporate members. Nice. And it's all about fostering collaboration between corporates and startups. And that's really kind of our foundation of what we're doing. Since then, we're now on our 6th batch here in Switzerland, in Zurich. But there was kind of a pool that we had also from Singapore a year and a half ago going, hey, we love your model. We find it very interesting as kind of a nonprofit model where it's really focusing on the collaboration and not so much on other aspects of it. So we've set up a shop in Singapore and recently had the same kind of pull in Spain. So we're now setting up a Spain program as well, and that will be launching in early 2021. So yeah, it started off as just hey, let's do something for the Swiss ecosystem. And then the model has been quite attractive to other ecosystems and asked us to bring it there. And so that's where we're at the moment.
Nice. Super exciting. So a lot of the startups, I'm assuming, then have a nice, easy access to new customers and new, potentially new sources of revenue, or if not, nothing else, feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you can imagine, we're talking about putting startups and corporates together. We kind of focus a bit on the B2B or B2B startups. I mean, Switzerland has, 7-8 million people. So we're not really seeing a lot of B2C startups. It's very B2B focused, especially in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. Now that we're expanding in Spain, we kind of maybe open that up a bit and maybe have a little bit more B2C. But again, yeah, we are focusing on startups that want to enter into a new market or set up their company into a new market, especially early stage, do some testing with Swiss banks or testing in Spanish or Singapore banks, but then we will have some global startups or global companies that want to enter into these markets, and we can facilitate that with some of our programs as well.
Awesome. Super exciting. So walk me through a little bit, because you're working in, seems like 3 very different ecosystems, right? So what are some of the differences even between maybe the ecosystems in Europe, between Spain and Zurich, and then Europe versus Asia?
Yeah. So what's interesting is that when we went to Singapore to begin with, it's very similar. Similar kind of small country, the focus area of the people, the cost of living. There's a lot of synergies between Singapore and Switzerland. Mm-hmm. So for us, that was a very natural progression into it. Very big innovation cultures in both countries. So very similar ideas there, which made it a little bit easier. Now, as we venture into Spain, it's a little bit different. Different cultural fit, different cost of living. Different startups that we're looking to attract to come there. So it has been a learning experience. We've kind of stumbled along the way, as you can imagine. But one thing that we have noticed along the way is that the curriculum and what we're teaching, and again, it's not, it's nothing revolutionary, but you still have the same startup problems. You still have the startup issues. The one thing is that maybe funding in Switzerland and in Singapore, you probably need funding a little bit earlier, because to develop, you need more money, because it's just expensive to establish yourself in these markets, especially early stage. So that's where we do also focus very much on the investing side of things in our program, especially in the Singapore and Swiss markets.
Awesome. Very exciting. So would you compare it maybe to, because I know that you're from San Diego, so yeah. Would you compare it maybe to the West Coast versus maybe more middle of the country, more rural America?
Yeah, it's really tough. There's a difference between, Silicon Valley is just different. There's a different funding method. There's a different approach. We have startups that have gone through certain programs like, oh, you don't just throw money at startups from day one. It's like, no, Switzerland's a bit more reserved, takes time. There's a bit more of a waiting out period and a little bit, I wouldn't say more due diligence. So I don't want to be disrespectful of it. It's just, it's a different approach.
Yeah.
When I compare it to different hubs in Europe, even though Switzerland is always ranked at some of the highest innovation, some of the innovation is great, but from a financial point of view, you're still looking at, Berlin, you're looking at London, you're looking at, even Tel Aviv, you're looking at different places that are a little bit more advanced from the fintech scene, where you have a little bit more investors. There is more of a, hey, if you're coming out of this jurisdiction, there's more of a, how do I put it, a backing that, hey, if you can make it here, it's okay. It's the same thing with Silicon Valley. If you develop something within Silicon Valley, maybe gone through a certain accelerator or had a certain investor that has vouched for you, it's easier to raise funding and develop. But just looking at Switzerland in particular, it is historically a bit reserved, waiting for other, just to validate. There's a little bit more, almost too much due diligence, if you were to ask me. It's almost overkill, and that's some things that we work with our startups on, is how to spot certain investors that will not add value or waste your time or trying to steal too much information from you or look at you. So there's some interesting things there, but it's a little bit different approach, to be honest.
Okay, interesting. I am curious, because we're talking about Europe and Brexit has been such dominating the news lines for so long. Have you seen a shift in the way that the ecosystems are working because of Brexit? Like, have you seen like an outpouring from London into the EU or specifically into Zurich, or has not much shifted yet because nothing's been finalized, though we are coming up to the deadline?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Switzerland is technically not in the EU.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So they're technically in a thing called Schengen, which is kind of the free trade and movement within. Switzerland takes all advantages of without having the commitment. So it's a very interesting place of it. But it works out well. But we don't see a lot of companies shifting from the UK into Switzerland, primarily because of the cost. It is still operationally very costly, but we do see a lot of movement of these teams that are setting up shops in Germany or in other aspects, even in Ireland. They're still moving around a bit. We don't feel it as much in Switzerland, to be fair. When we're scouting startups and we're working with startups and trying to attract them into the Swiss ecosystem, you're going to have good talent anywhere. And there's an amazing amount of talent that's coming out of the UK that has worked in the high streets, has worked in the banks, understands certain processes, and actually can develop solutions that have tremendous value. And within Switzerland, when we're focusing on our banks and insurance companies, that knowledge is still amazing. And we love working with companies that are especially coming out of it.
Awesome. Cool. So let's switch gears a little bit. So let's walk through, you talked a little bit about due diligence and maybe a bit excessive on some areas, but walk me through kind of your due diligence process. So what specifically are you looking for? What gets you excited? That type of fun stuff.
So just a little caveat. So we are, for the first time, setting up an investment fund, and we have an investment fund that we're setting up.
Nice.
We're going to invest in the graduating startups of our program. So we have a little bit of different model where we're not putting money in from day one, but we'll put in money after the 6-month program to invest in the teams that are still there. Now, before that, and what we never done, we haven't really invested. So we look at it slightly different. So how we approach our scouting process and our due diligence is that we sit with our corporate members, which are banks, insurance companies, core banking systems, et cetera. And we sit with them, okay, what's the trends? What's your focus areas? What are you looking for? And that gives us a good idea of what's out there. Now, part of the trend things on a lot of these banks and financial services companies, they actually don't know what they don't know. They don't know what's going to disrupt.
Yeah.
They don't know the big changes. So they kind of look at us a lot of times. So we'll work with them on, hey, what are the trends out there? What's coming up? We then take that information and then we go out and scout. And then we come across all the startups, they apply. And then what we do to filter it, other than the actual technologies, in our 6-month program, which is our early stage program, we have a very simple criteria to join the program. It's just 2 team members working full time and a prototype, which gives us a bit of flexibility to see who we want in. Because our idea and our whole point is by the end of the 6 months, they have a proof of concept or they have a project up and running with one of our corporate members, which is really attractive, especially if you're early stage startup, that if you come to a program of corporates who they vote you in or want you to be a part of it, that by the end of it, there might be a project that you can do. And then you can have a case study and then take it from there.
Yeah.
But as we go through the due diligence process, I mean, we really like no different than you would from a VC. You're really looking at the team, but what we really focus on is the problem. Are you really serving a problem? Because a lot of early stage founders, they come with solutions and they look for problems. And you've probably heard that quite often. That's great. We have some of the best universities in the world within a few miles, kilometers of us.
Yeah.
So you have they come, hey, we've built this tech, this solution is okay, what's the problem? And they're out trying to figure it out, which is an approach, and that's a way. But having them quickly to figure out what their real problem is really important for us to understand. And then it comes down to the people in the team.
Yeah.
I mean, just a quick side note, we had one startup in our program that was 3 co-founders. They've built a startup before, amazing. And their prototype was a 1-page piece of paper that says, this is what we want to develop. You're kind of backing the people, at the end of the day, because we understood what the problem they were trying to do. It was a massive problem in the regulatory space. And we came on board and they're probably one of the most successful startups that has ever come out of our program. So it's a little bit of everything. And at the end of the day, there's a bit of a gut feeling. I mean, you probably talked to a number of VCs and, you see thousands of applications a year and you have interviews with hundreds of people. There's some intuitive nature that you actually can pick up from people. But again, we're looking a lot of the times at the problem and the people.
I like that a lot because I can't tell you how many times I see like decks and I'm like, okay, is it a painkiller or is it a vitamin? Like, is it actually something that like people are going to get over the line and actually pay money for, or is it something that's just kind of annoying that, yeah, if there was a freemium out there, maybe I would try using it. I don't think enough founders really understand that aspect of it, especially when you're looking at developing a company. Because you're right, the amount of time that I see, but typically I see it more in engineering teams or engineering homogeneous teams where they will have built something and they are looking for a problem to fix with it, but basing a venture around a very large problem and being able to solve for that, I think is one of the best ways to be able to have a successful startup, because there are actual pain points out there. You're not going and searching for them continuously. So, very, very astute observation on your part.
Completely. I mean, it's within the fintech space as well. We also deal with the average age of the teams that are here are much bigger than in other accelerators, because you're dealing with financial services regulation. There's a different level of understanding in a way of certain problems. And I think the most successful startups, and this isn't everybody, it's not all the cases, but you're dealing with people that have been working in banks or insurance companies, have seen the processes, seen the problems firsthand, or they might have said, hey, they raised it to their superior, hey, we should try XYZ, or we don't have the budget or whatnot. They're like, well, you know what? I'm going to build this and then I can then sell it back to you. And we've actually seen that a number of times within it, which is quite interesting, because they understand the real problems and they're actually building it specifically for their core knowledge and their core understanding of what that technology is. Now, that's not has to be all of them, but we do see an average age in our programs of late to mid 30s in a way, which is not sometimes the average age of some of the other accelerators out there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so let's so we've seen what we look for. What are what are some of the red flags that you see during a due diligence process where you're like, whoa, like I'm out?
Yeah, the one advice I like to give to the startups is we as investors or accelerators, we have Google, and we're really easily can Google your name. We can quickly look at your LinkedIn profile. And if you are there and you are working with 10 different companies, or, I mean, there's a lot of little red flags like that. It's kind of the commitment issue, because you can get a lot of smooth talkers that are amazing presenters. And within Europe, the interesting thing is that, if you're a native English speaker, you almost have a step up because everything is, especially in financial services, in English. So you can get a smooth talking salesman that could come in. It's like, wow, that's amazing. It sounds great. But there's no substance sometimes behind it. So it's really easy for us to, okay, that sounds great, but we will Google you real quick. And it's literally, it's not rocket science, So we will take a quick look at it. So if you're going to lie and say, hey, I'm full-time, I'm this, that, and the other, just be aware that we're going to catch you out. And if you're lying, then there's a trust issue from the get-go. And then it's really hard to recover from that. Honest, I mean, again, I'm just my personal opinion, a lot of the people on our team, we'd rather just have you be 100% honest. Hey, listen, I'm already working at this job. I might be leaving. That's cool. We can work around that. We can figure out a plan of attack. But the moment we see kind of some distrust, then it's really hard to get back on that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times there's a fine line in between like founders selling, especially when they're raising capital, and just like being kind of dishonest, and it's very, very difficult to come back, because especially I love it when it kills me when founders are like, oh, I have a commitment from ABC VC. I'm like, okay, like this is a very small ecosystem. Like I will call them like because I know them if you were stating that. And a lot of time I don't think they understand how small the actual ecosystem is and how many of us know each other. I've literally had a founder do that. It's like, oh, we have a commitment for Series A from this. We're just raising a bridge round to get there. I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna call John.
And that's very true. And I know this is also going to sound really a bit from a salesman point of view. We as investors, we as accelerators, we want to feel important and we want to add value to you. So if you come armed with, hey, you've done research on us, what do we do? How can we help you? And you bring that forward. Hey, this is why I want you to be an investor in us. This is why I want to be part of your accelerator. We think you can add value in X, Y, and Z. We have our egos as well. We want to feel like we're adding value. There's some accelerators or some investors that are just spray and pray, don't care. They're just going to follow the investment model of someone else and just do it. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But early stage VCs, angels, the angels we work with, understand who you're pitching to, especially from an investors. We're not just money, we're more than that. We can actually add value. And where do you think we can add value? And that's where we want to be along for the journey as well. It's not, the money is, yes, of course, we want the returns. But we also want to add value to you as a company. How can we connect with you? Who can we connect you with? How can we, be an integral part of your growth? And there is huge value in that. That sometimes the startups say, I need to raise X. I'm going to call everybody or do everything. It's like, okay, take a step back. What value do you want? Who are the actual people you want on your cap table? Value yourself.
Yeah.
That's also really important, because you can also say no. Not every money is good money in a way. Say no to certain people that you think are going to be a headache, because guess what? You have to have the mindset that you're going to be extremely successful in 4 or 5 years, have a good exit of a bigger multiple. If you get a headache on early on, they're going to hinder you from your growth aspirations. I promise you.
No, 100% true. So, I mean, that's a good question. So what should So you touched on it briefly, but what should an entrepreneur not look for? Like, what should they look for in a VC? Like, what is that kind of specific?
Yeah, so we just because we work with a little bit earlier stage. It's kind of seed stage, even almost pre-seed sometimes, which you get a lot of angel investors, which are tremendous because angel investors have, especially in Switzerland, they've done it before. They have the extra money. They want to get into the scene. They want to help out. So there's amazing value. But what you find, looming in the weeds, especially in the angel space, are consultants that will try to steal your ideas, get you on board, say, hey, I'll invest, a small amount, but you have to give me a 5% consultant fee or all this kind of stuff. And then you're spending hours and hours and hours with them, and you're basically wasting all the time. That's a real struggle for early stage startups because they don't know how to fundraise. They never maybe done it before. These consultant people can be very interested in them, and there might be a lure at the end, and they just drag them out forever and ever, where there's actually real serious angel investors that move a little bit quicker. Hey, I know what you're doing. I get it. Here's the value I can add. So my one big thing to startups when they're looking for investors is make sure that you're also interviewing them, because it's okay to ask the questions, and the serious investors are going to be more than happy to answer your questions, because for them, they're like, wow, the startup knows their thing. They're prepared. They know the value that they have. They understand the value of their product, and they understand the value of this negotiation, the commercials. So they've now taken that time with me. They've done that interview with me. That's a person that I can back that actually has the ability to grow. So really take your time during those interviews with them, because you have people that are just leeches that will suck the life out of you. And that's really unfortunate. And I don't wish that on any startup, because they have this passion and vision, and you have people that are just trying to take. And and sometimes you don't realize it until you're, 7th or 8th meeting in. Sometimes you're like, oh crap, here I am. But it's hard, but that's what you always try to teach. And we try to work with our startups to be very aware of.
Nice. No, that's very good. I don't think enough entrepreneurs actually do that, especially like when I have coffee appointments and I'll have conversations with people. I don't think that sometimes I feel like they're scared to ask those type of questions.
They really are. Yeah, startups tell me all the time, well, what can I ask? I'm like, anything.
Yeah.
Don't hold back. I mean, don't hold back. Ask the questions, because the moment you can be honest and open and have that frank conversation, the moment your company has a problem, you can quickly go to an investor, ask for help, or you can, maybe you're doing something good. You want to ask for an extra value, or you can want to do something with them. To have that openness early on is such a great value add for you long-term as well.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so we talked about some of the challenges that they have with VCs, but what about some of the challenges that founders run into just in general? Like, what are some of the biggest problems that you see early on?
Other than the problem solution, product market fit, that's figuring all that out, which is obviously very important. We find a lot of co-founder issues. When we set up the program back in 2016, we didn't focus a whole lot on it. We didn't focus a lot on kind of the equity split. I mean, again, we're talking about very early stage startup. We didn't focus on the equity split, the team, the roles. A lot of it was just product and integration, investing, and get them into corporates. We realized that a lot of co-founders don't know how to have those honest conversations with each other. If it's two friends coming together, 50-50 split, well, that sounds great in theory, but guess what? When that becomes a $10 million, $20 million company, and so there's a lot of questions like that. So we have very much focused in recent batches the team dynamic. What are the role profiles that you have now? What are your skill sets? Really better understanding you as people. And then what is your roadmap of your HR roadmap? Like in an ideal world, what does it look like? Who are you hiring? It's getting people to kind of think and understand their own personal weaknesses as well. If you have a great solution, you already have interest and people want you, you think that you're going to be perfect in everything. Well, not necessarily. It doesn't mean you're going to be a great HR person. You're not going to be a great fundraiser. Maybe you're not a good tech person. So there's all these elements of who are you? Where do you want to get to? And what's that HR dynamic along the way? We've had workshops where we do kind of like a team workshop where it's over almost 18 hours over a number of days. We've had teams that have split up halfway through. And is it horrible? Yeah. But guess what? If it wasn't going to happen then, it was going to happen 1 year, 6 months down the line.
Yep.
And they come back to us a couple weeks later, a month later, say, thank you, it was the greatest thing. Because they don't waste their time. Hey, we weren't aligned. We weren't focused on. And I think having that conversation is good. And one thing I also see with a lot of startups is that you can almost do too much the other way, where, hey, I'm a great network. I can bring a lot of people together. And next thing you know, you're an early stage startup with no clients and you're managing 10 advisors that don't add real value. Maybe they connected you to a person here, connect a person there, give you feedback on your prototype or your product, but you're not growing and developing your company. So there is a bit of a fine line there. And then at the end of the day, it's just be committed to it. Go for it. And I have the utmost respect and admiration for any startup founder. I've gone through it. It was the most difficult time of my life, but also the most successful and the most rewarding. So I get it. It's not easy, but you just force the people to have those conversations because they're not fun. But the moment you have it, there's a level of relief and a trust in the person sitting next to you that they're delivering on what they are supposed to deliver on, which is, it's a load off your mind, especially if you're a co-founder.
I think the anticipation up to the conversation is probably worse than the actual.
Oh, it's horrible.
Conversation.
It is so hard because what we do, we do worksheets with the teams where they fill it out individually. They assess each other individually. They assess their other co-founders and they talk about it. And guess what? It's sometimes really uncomfortable. But guess what? It's actually 9 times out of 10, it's rewarding. They love it because they're all right, cool. We are on the same page because most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they're on the same page. They just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And that's the fun thing about it. Oh, wow. We did have the same vision. We never had these conversations. Now, some startups also come in and they're actually all on the same page, have had this conversation and can have those tough conversations. But when you're an innovator in a startup, by nature, you almost want to do good. You want to add value. You don't want to have the conflict. A huge generalization, I know. So having those conflicting things, can you put them in a safe environment to have those difficult conversations is really, really, really important. And what we do isn't unique or special. There's stuff you can Google this online and figure out how to do it. We just put it in an environment where it feels safe. And I think that's also important.
Awesome. Very cool. What are some of the areas in the startup landscape that you're kind of excited about, even within fintech? Like, what's getting you kind of excited? What are some of the problems that you're seeing right now?
So, other than what our corporates tell us to scout for, no, joking aside, they do look at us a lot, saying, "Hey, what's out there? What's the trends out there?" Being in Switzerland and being in Crypto Valley, there's a lot of we get a lot of blockchain startups here in Switzerland. It's very, very nice to see that over the last year or so, the use cases are becoming a lot better. It's not just, hey, we do blockchain, give us money. We saw influx of it here in Switzerland. The ICOs were mind-blowing. So it's amazing that that's kind of been watered out, and there's actually some amazing use cases. So we're very, very happy to see some of those. Again, boring as all hell, but a lot of process automation, especially in the financial services and insurance industry, there's still a lot to be done. There's a tremendous amount to be done. But what gets us excited here at the F10 is, deep tech. There's some deep tech. There's some really fringe technologies that haven't really come into the financial services space. I'm still looking for the best AR, VR solution in finance. I know it exists. I haven't seen it. But what's a real, genuine, fun use case where it's not just cutesy? And there's probably some great stuff that's going to come in. But even though we are a fintech, insurtech, regtech accelerator, we work with every kind of technology, because if you can conceive of a way to collaborate with a financial services player, be it a chat bot or whatever, big data, if you can conceive of it, we want to work with you.
Yeah.
So let's figure out a way that we can, build a product together that services the industry. So, we don't have a certain focus. We almost more focus on what our corporates want. And then our corporates also look at us going, hey, what are other industries doing? How can we make sure we don't miss the boat, kind of thing?
Cool. Awesome. So a little bit tangential, because I read the Financial Times, surprisingly enough, just because American news is tough to sort through. But because I read the Financial Times, Wirecard has dominated the headlines for, I don't know, the better part of 6 months. Walk me through, has any new regulation challenges come from it? Has there been backlash towards fintech startups? Like what's kind of happening in the ecosystem from that standpoint?
So the fact that we're based in Switzerland, so a lot of the focus we have a lot in our program, especially it being set up in Switzerland, we actually have very good regulators.
Mm-hmm.
The regulators, just like every other jurisdiction, is trying to set up some sort of fintech license, a fintech sandbox. They're trying to be as proactive as they can, but at the end of the day, they're still going to be regulators, and they still need to do their job. I look at those type of fraud situations, those kind of issues, as almost a good thing, because it gives opportunity to do it right. There's always some kind of bubble. There's always someone going to take advantage, and actually has the regulators on their toes a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But it also means that if you have a good business model and good foundation behind it, of course, there's always going to be a level of corruption. You still have to prove what you do is right and that you have the right checks and balances. But there hasn't been a massive shunning of fintech. We've actually seen a lot more investments within fintech, especially in Switzerland. Now, I can't speak for the details of other European jurisdictions. I know there's some large tickets coming out of Berlin and the UK, so investing is happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not seeing a trend where, okay, this is a topic we're trying to get away from in the financial services space. There's still a lot of push. Now, a lot of the investment is now going away from the B2C space. There's enough challenger banks out there, especially in Europe, and there's a number of them that are actually coming into the US or that are moving into the US. But there's more money into kind of the operational elements of things, which are being good. I mean, I think even today, I don't even know when this clip is going to go up, but what the largest fintech Swiss core banking system just got bought by a Japanese company. And you see, so there is a lot of push at the moment in financial services and in investment.
Awesome. Very cool. I like that aspect of it, that it can be a positive situation because it can lead to X, Y, and Z. So no, it's super exciting. Sorry for the curveball. Just been.
No, maybe it's my over positive thinking, but whenever these opportunities come up, it actually is, or these things happen, they're actually good opportunities for people to really, if you're going to try to sneak through a system and get a company live anyway, you're going to have to figure out your better foundation anyway. So you might as well do it from the beginning. Maybe that's a bit too simplistic, but it's, true investors and true innovation, and it's still needed.
Yeah.
So people are still going to invest, and people still want to invest time and effort and money into it. So it's going to happen one way or the other.
Awesome. Cool. So, final thoughts, final pieces of advice for entrepreneurs. You guys have an application up now as well. We can touch on that. Yeah.
I mean, we have applications over, for our incubation acceleration program, both in Switzerland, Singapore, and then we still have, we're just opening up in Spain. So we have our program open for that. So if there are people, especially when we scout worldwide, we've had teams from Brazil, from California, all the way down to, South Africa, to Asia. So we have really Australia, everywhere around the world that join our program. So, but the one thing I would say to these entrepreneurs is keep it up. Really, I'm amazed by it. My job I love because I'm inspired by them every single day. It gets me going. You know, they are sacrificing their time and effort to deliver something and really commit to it. And it's okay to fail. The failure culture in America, we don't realize it being Americans, that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
It's okay to make mistakes, try again. In some other cultures, I know Swiss culture is slowly changing, but if you failed once, you're blackballed forever.
Really?
With the youth now, it's changing massively. You know, they're really taking chances and taking risks. And especially in innovation, you're going to fail. You're going to start with a certain solution. You realize that maybe, hey, you have to pivot slightly. It's okay. Listen to your customers. You know, what are your customers saying? Get feedback from them. Even if they're paying customers, get that feedback. How can you develop something else for a future client? Really think about your long-term vision, and then don't get stuck on it. You might put a goal marker, you know, 3 years down the line, but things in the world evolves. You might pivot. It's okay to pivot. It's okay to reassess. You know, you don't want to force something that it's not there anymore. And it's okay to fail. And that's the one thing that's really, maybe because we are in Switzerland and there is that, we need to really reiterate that team. It's okay to fail. It's okay to have a product that doesn't work. It's okay to say, hey, this doesn't work. And if you're still stuck into it, you know, give yourself, let's say, hey, I want to figure out within 8 months, or give it whatever time horizon. If it doesn't work by 8 months, you know, I'm going to go back to the drawing board and either get a different job, get a paying job, or whatever it may be. But give yourself certain timelines and goals to achieve, especially early stage. Because if you don't, you just aimlessly go around. You kind of just don't have that focus. Really give yourself goals and timelines, and it's okay to fail. And if you don't fail, it doesn't mean you failed. It's just, hey, it was the wrong time or wrong product, but jump back in and do it again, because the world needs entrepreneurs. And that sounds as corny as hell, but that's how we have evolved and continue to evolve. And I just love working with them. I just love it. I mean, we all do here at the F10. So keep it up, and you inspire us, and you inspire the investors more than anything. So just continue to do what you do.
Awesome, James. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, and yeah, look forward to chatting again soon.
Lucas, thank you so much, and wish you all the best.
Thanks.